Here's a mild disclaimer. The following video is going to have some mild spoilers of the game Undertale. I'm not going to spoil everything, but there's going to be stuff that's in it. So I highly recommend that you play Undertale before you watch this video. Seriously, play it. It's a great game. You should go buy it. It's $10. Everyone's got $10. I spent $10 on ice cream. Probably not, but still, play Undertale. It's a great experience. It's better than ice cream. And I don't say that about a lot of things. Hey, have you ever thought about how many things you've killed in a game? I mean, seriously, does having killed thousands of Ratata make me a bad person? These are things I wouldn't normally think about until I played this incredible game called Undertale. Now, in case you've been living under a rock, or in my case, the rock where people enjoy quirky RPGs, then you probably already heard of Undertale. If not, congratulations, because you're definitely cooler than I'll ever hope to be, and it's also really strange that you decided to click on this video arbitrarily, but good for you for stepping outside of your comfort zone. In all seriousness, the game's been able to make quite some splash on the interwebs, what with all the Let's Plays and the reviews and the puddin' pops. The point is, the game seems to have really had an effect on people. It's an amazing and unique sort of experience that makes it stick with people for some reason. But I'm not here to tell you that Undertale's a good game or something. Most people knew that already. A review could tell you that. No, in this first episode of Unit Operations, we're going to take a look at what cool things Undertale did in order to create such a dope experience, yo. What? Kids don't say that anymore? Then why'd you Undertale makes a lot of interesting choices that help it stand out from other classical RPGs. One cool thing that Undertale does is completely change up the way the battle system is approached. There's a random encounter system and battles are turn-based as you'd expect, but the options presented to the player are considerably different. Attacking is pretty normal, although it utilizes a timing-based system, sort of like that kicking off thing you do in Madden, which is bad for me because I always kind of sucked at those. Crap. But at any rate, it was a good way of making attacking more engaging. Things get more interesting on the defensive though, where instead of automatically receiving damage each turn, you control a heart in a small box and dodge enemy attack patterns in a sort of bullet hell kind of minigame. The system is well designed, going so far as to combine enemy attack patterns when attacked by multiple enemies at once, and changing the mechanics of the minigame during some boss fights. Most importantly, this system succeeds at preventing the mash A to win syndrome that many RPGs tend to have today. It forces the player to pay attention to what they do in the game and makes each fight more engaging. It feels good to avoid taking damage in a turn due to your own skill and dexterity. It's like, you can't touch me, you can't touch this, I'm too. That aside, the most well-known and interesting aspect of Undertale's battle system is the ability to spare enemies. After all, it's in the friggin' tagline, Undertale, the RPG where no one has to die. In battles, you're free to explore the Act command, which allows you to interact with the enemy in various and mostly humorous ways. Like this unicorn man-horse thing is one of my personal favorites, where in order to spare him, you have a flexing contest, and eventually, he flexes himself out of the room. Weird. Or this other guy who has a it's a snow cap, and then there's the snow cap who you have to not look at his hat, and he gets really annoyed because you're not giving his awesome hat like the attention it deserves, so he just up and leaves. Or Jerry, who you just have to ditch because he's fucking Jerry. So why is this significant? Well, a number of reasons really, many of which tie directly into the game's plot and what kind of experience the player has, but here's something else to think about. Because you don't need to defeat enemies and gain levels in order to beat the game, Undertale effectively removes the need for grinding entirely. Not only that, but it manages to do this while still maintaining a consistent difficulty curve throughout the entire game. The bosses get harder to dodge, and the actions required to spare certain enemies gets more complicated. The focus is still on sort of strategy, it's just a different and more engaging one in my opinion. Toby Fox once said this in an interview when asked about Undertale's combat system. I feel that it's important to make every monster feel like an individual. If you think about it, basically all monsters in RPGs are the same. They attack you, you heal, you attack them, they die. There's no meaning to that. Good old Toby, bringing the heat. I love it. And I guess that's the main thing Undertale does so well, which is adding meaning to things and making them significant. Man, I'm getting tired of talking about design and mechanics. How about a joke? What does a skeleton say before he eats his spaghetti? Bon appetit! Did you like my joke? Probably not, because it wasn't very funny. But unlike me, Undertale has laughs for days. Yep, the game has quite a reputation for its off-the-walls sense of humor and eclectic cast of eccentric characters. And I mean, it's really hard to call humor objective, but you know what? No, this game's pretty much objectively funny. No questions asked. The game's chock full of jokes, some of my favorites being this bunny guy who's legitimately disturbed by this bunny woman who appears to have a pet bunny, which is kind of wrong when you think about it. Or this guy who looks at ficus in a restaurant because he doesn't really want to look stupid for not having a reservation. Or the shop owners not letting you sell anything to them with a weirdly realistic perspective on economics. A lot of the jokes in Undertale actually poke fun at the conventions of RPGs and games in general, which provides for some really great comedy. Like the innkeeper who gives you your money back because realistically you only stayed up in your room for a couple of minutes. The game's writing is tight, and in my opinion some of the best game writing out there, as a lot of the jokes in particular take advantage of the medium specifically, like this Snowpuff joke. Only a well-written video game could dick with you like that. In all seriousness, the humor in Undertale encompasses far more than the writing. I'd say that Undertale presents a sort of atmosphere of humor. The art style of the game is obviously retro-inspired, and more simplistic in nature. I'd argue that this simplicity actually helps to facilitate the game's comedic sensibilities by emphasizing visual characterization. In plain English, it's kind of like the over-exaggeration of smaller details makes it easier to convey comedy. It's kind of like how newspaper comics usually have a simple art style as well. Think about like the Peanuts or Calvin and Hobbes. The game also utilizes good audio design to strengthen its hilarity. Like when you talk to this Pomeranian night dog thing and hear this noise. It's pretty goofy. Another good example of the simplistic visuals and audio design working together to create a sense of comedy is this sequence right here. This duck is cooler than me. This duck is cooler than everyone. My point is, Undertale's a very funny game, and more importantly, it's very deliberate and intelligent about its jokes, which is to say that there's a science to the silliness, so to speak. As funny as Undertale is though, it's not without meaning. You see, I wouldn't go so far as to describe Undertale as what some would say is a comedy RPG. Saying that Undertale is a comedy RPG would imply that at the end of the day, all it's good for is a good laugh, and I have to strongly disagree with that. Undertale is able to achieve an incredible depth for a game, while being funny too, which is an incredible feat in my opinion. Nowhere is this more clear than in Undertale's amazing use of characterization. Undertale's characters are probably the highlight of most people's playthroughs. They're incredibly funny as you'd expect them to be, whether it's Undyne's ridiculous over-the-top attitude, Papyrus's obsession with spaghetti and showing off his incredibly tall and unnecessary sink, Dr. Alfie's crazed anime rantings, or just about anything Sans says ever. Seriously, Sans is the best. Just about every character in Undertale, down to the enemies, is distinguishable in some way. They're all unique and memorable due to small bits of characterization. Even the side characters and enemies, like Napstablook. I actually don't really know how to pronounce his name, but he's an enemy that you fight early on in the game. Later on, you get to talk to him. He likes to make mixtapes and lie around on the ground feeling like garbage. I mean, guys, it's like he's my spirit animal. Or my favorite shop owner of all time, who works a burger stand and is upset about how his entire young life led up to flippin' burgers. Seriously, this guy's reactions to things are the best. He can go from as cool as a cucumber to as high-strung as like a fiddle, I guess, in literal seconds. Anyways, as funny as Undertale's characters are, that's not all there is to them. The characters in Undertale are round and complex. They legitimately appear to have feelings and aspirations, which is why some of the best moments in the game for me were learning more about the characters by dating them. Yes, I'm serious. Like, when you date Undyne, a character that originally put the fear of God into me, only to find out that she's really just a passionate person. Like, really passionate. Like, astonishingly passionate. But she cares a lot about her friends and just wants what's best for them. She's always sort of been a hothead, but she's a hothead with a big heart. And you find this to be true of most of the boss characters in Undertale. They don't really want to fight you. They're just doing what they feel is necessary because they're desperate. It's an amazingly human and understandable thing to do, really. But by showing these characters kindness, you're able to sort of discover who that character really is. It's really an amazing thing. And of course, for as funny as the characters may be, they also react to your actions in the game, much like actual people would. The best example of this is with Sans, who, in my experience during my pacifist run, was a hilarious and good friend. We'd eat burgers together and he'd always look out for me on my adventure. On the other hand, you could barely see Sans at all until the end of the game, where I'm told he gives more aggressive players a, well, bad time. It all ties into the choices that you make in battle, and whether you decide to spare enemies or defeat them. If you play peacefully, it's a pretty good time mostly. Don't get me wrong, there's still danger and outright creepy moments, of course, but you have friends to help you through it. The game gets even more funny, and the ending is a lot more satisfying. If you play like a jerk, then the experience becomes more twisted and horrific. You could have been your best friends become your worst enemies, and the game really leaves you feeling unsettled with yourself. Or so I'm told. Never did a genocide run personally. I don't really have the stomach for it, I guess. This is probably Undertale's greatest strength, which is the ability to get players to feel something real. Every aspect of the game excels at this, from its incredible use of storytelling, to its simple and whimsical atmosphere, to its amazing soundtrack. Which, sidebar if I may, is seriously a miracle that I failed to mention how amazing it is before. I mean, this is literally now one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. I can't stop listening to it. It was all created by Toby Fox by himself, so serious props to him for laying down some freaky beats. That aside, the game's soundtrack provides an amazing atmosphere, able to capture feelings of uncertainty, to calm, somber, and tranquil, scary, inspiring, really amazing stuff. But perhaps the best way Undertale invokes emotion in its players is in its incredible attention to detail. I mean, did you know that you can avoid the Muffet boss fight entirely by arbitrarily holding onto a spider donut you can buy damn near at the beginning of the game? Or similarly, if you kill this practice dummy in the beginning of the game, you're actually destroying some ghost home, which in turn causes the brother of that ghost to spitefully attack you later on in the game. Seriously, it's kind of amazing the connections that small actions that you make that don't really seem to have a consequence have on later aspects of gameplay. Undertale designed a system that actually has meaning and holds players fully accountable for their actions, even for the things that we think we can get away with. Alright, get your milk and cookies cause it's anecdote time. When I first started up Undertale, I found the idea of not killing any monsters to be a sort of novel challenge. So I made my way through the ruins without killing a single one, and when I got to the old house with Toriel, I felt pretty happy with myself. Originally, I prolonged the home sequence as long as I could because I was just too much of a baby to tell Toriel I wanted to leave. She's just so nice, you know? Eventually, I grew impatient and wanted the game to get on with itself, and I got to the point where in order to progress, it legitimately seemed like I had no choice but to kill Toriel. So I did. And I felt like trash, so I decided to Elite 4 that bitch and restart my save file. The second time I fought her, I noticed that when I was trying to interact with her, it said, "You thought about telling Toriel that you saw her die, but that would be creepy." At this point, I was pretty weirded out, but I shrugged it off, and by sparing her 20 or so times, I was finally able to save her. I felt pretty good about myself. Only to be approached in the next room by this jerk, or as you guys probably know him, Flowey the friggin' Flower, and he told me that he knew what I did, and that I was a killer and a cheater. It was at this point that I put the controller down. I felt legitimately terrible. It was just a game, sure, but that doesn't mean what Flowey said wasn't true. I did kill Toriel, one of the kindest and sweetest characters in the game, God bless her soul, and I did cheat in order to bring her back. That moment solidified Undertale in my mind as a game that was worth something more. Few games have ever affected me in the same way that Undertale had in that very moment. When I say Undertale is able to get players to feel, it's moments like this that I'm talking about. And Undertale is chock full of them. Like when players complete the genocide run, they eventually are confronted by the usually comical Sans. If the player somehow is able to defeat the pun-making Hellbeast, he comments that you're doing all this just because you can. Which is true. I mean, there's literally no other reason you would intentionally kill that many enemies. There's nothing really in it for you. You're just doing it so you can. It's kind of like a selfish desire when you think about it. Undertale displays an amazing understanding of player psychology, and is just downright incredible because of it. The game isn't just some funny, weird RPG with kooky characters and meta elements. It's an experience that takes full advantage of its medium. The game's funny, sure, but it's not funny without reason. The humor in the game provides the necessary contrast for the more somber moments, the moments that make you reflect on yourself and life in general. It's a game that, for as simple as it looks, has a lot of heart and thought put into it. Playing it made me think about those relationships that really matter. It got me to think about whether what I was doing was right or wrong. Is it okay for me to kill if I can just hit the reset button? Does that make it okay? What's it say about me as a person? But most importantly, it got me to think in general. Undertale is an almost indescribable experience, but more than that, it's an incredibly well-designed one. Nothing in Undertale feels haphazard or incomplete. Every single aspect of it, from the gameplay to the plot to the writing to the audio design, seem to be working together beautifully the entire time. I have to give major props to Toby Fox, who pretty much single-handedly created the entire game. His game is a true testament to what a driven and passionate individual can accomplish. And he's a pretty chill guy. I recommend you check out his other stuff too, but I'm not getting paid to promote him or anything. Regardless, am I trying to sell you the idea that Undertale is a perfect game? No. I'm trying to sell you the idea that Undertale is a game with a clear vision, and that it utilizes all of its components in order to achieve that vision. That it's coherent and focused. That it's a game that takes full advantage of its medium and is a true testament to what games can accomplish as a medium. But at the very least, Undertale to me is just a game with a lot of heart that fills me with, well, determination. I'm Captain Boomerang, and that concludes the first ever episode of Unit Operations. I'm gonna go get some damn spaghetti.